Good morning, everybody. Welcome to what I believe is the 47th or 48th Ageless Wisdom course, and it's actually the completion of 1 year. Next Sunday that we started on February 20th. And so we're coming up on 1 year, and I'm here to introduce my dear friend, Michael Benner, who's going to share with us today all of his wisdom on, I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank on the topic. But in addition to that, I'm also going to post some great information in the chat book. In the chat, there's a link to Michael's website where you can see about private confidential one-on-one sessions with him. And just a reiteration of the information about this class, as well as a link to Michael's book, Fearless Intelligence. In addition to that, just want to let you know that if you come up with questions or comments for our Q&A session at the end, feel free to chat them to me, and then I will share them with Michael when the time comes. And that's it. Thank you.
I don't think you said your name. Me is
Oh,
Hannah Miller.
my name is Hannah, yeah. And Melinda is the other person that co-hosts this. I've known Michael since I was 4 years old. So he's one of my closest friends, and I'm proud to introduce him.
Thank you. True enough that. Welcome to Wisdom of the Soul. This is a class that's sponsored by Ageless Wisdom Mystery School. So really appreciate you being here live any Sunday morning at 11 a.m. Pacific that you're able to do that. Be part of the group Mind and the group meditation, which we'll do in just a moment. If you wish to listen to the recording, search Ageless Wisdom Mystery School, whether you're looking for a website or a podcast or a YouTube channel, Ageless Wisdom Mystery School, and the class is Wisdom of the Soul. Appreciate it on YouTube. If you subscribe, we're stretching for 500 subscribers, at which point YouTube will help promote us and it raises us in keyword searches. I think we're at about 400 now. And so too with the podcast. If you listen on Apple Podcasts or a player app called Podchaser, both of those encourage reviews and ratings, and that helps us too. I don't think very many people realize that. If you review my book on Amazon, that also raises us in keyword searches and helps other people find this material. So it's a great way to support us. And as we mentioned last week, if you can just, and a couple did, I noticed that. Thank you very much for that. Just on your Twitter feed, your Instagram, your Facebook, just post, here's a class that I really like and I'm benefiting from it. And there's a meditation and Q&A and, listen to the podcast or the YouTube channel or join us live on Sunday. It's all free. Imagine, it's all free. And today we're going to talk about the art and science of deep relaxation. Sometimes I call it profound relaxation, for it is deep and it is profound. And of course, the benefits of relaxation are that it's essentially an antidote to the problems that accumulate as a result of stress and anxiety. So the first step toward managing stress, tension, pressure, anxiety, and every aspect of fear, from panic and horror and phobias all the way out to mild nervousness and apprehension, a little or a lot. Just that feeling that something unfortunate is about to happen, the shoe is going to drop at any minute. That's evidence of a high level of anxiety. Also, a short attention span, as I mentioned in the newsletter this week, because of their exposure to phones and tablets and computers, younger people are suffering from what's often called ADD or ADHD, attention deficit. It's just difficult for them to focus or to concentrate. And that's compounded by the fact that many people think concentration is an effort. There's very little understanding, generally speaking, that concentration is a relaxation skill. You may learn that in sports psychology, or maybe you're an actor, a performer of some sort, a singer, a dancer, and you learn the importance of relaxation in releasing performance anxiety. Students who have test anxiety should understand the importance of breathing and relaxing um, as an antidote, as a cure to the routine anxiety that accumulates in a society such as the one we've created, just frenetic, mad, chaotic, way too fast. Maybe we'll evolve to the point that we can manage this. However, I think as we evolve, we're going to uh, look for a slower pace and more solitude because, as we'll discuss today, the benefits of stress go way beyond improving your physical health. Usually, people think of stress management as a way to boost the immune system and avoid illness, but it shatters awareness mentally. Stress makes us stupid. We make mistakes, we overlook opportunities, we behave reflexively, often without any thought or consideration as to the consequences. And emotionally, stress just hurts. Um, it's a bit of a paradox to recognize that the numbness that comes from being overly stressed hurts. Isn't that odd? That to feel numb is to experience a vague kind of heartache or sadness. And of course, the association of depression with anxiety is well studied and well known. So, the antidote is deep relaxation. That's what we're going to talk about today as an art and as a science. And we'll talk about a little bit more about what happens when we don't meditate, how easily you can learn to meditate. It's people often make it way too hard. And then, of course, the benefits that accrue when we practice meditation on a regular basis. So, with that, let's do it. Let's do an opening meditation, and then we'll, at the conclusion of the meditation, talk more about what we just did and why it's good to incorporate it into our lives. This is part of personal and spiritual development. Personal, intrapersonal, interpersonal, and transpersonal. Uh, transpersonal psychology, transpersonal development is just another way of talking about spiritual unfoldment or moving toward enlightenment. So get comfortable in your chairs. Most of us we're Westerners, we sit in straight back chairs, even if you're in a nice, comfortable sofa or easy chair, no problem at all. Sit up straight. The idea is not to be rigid, but balanced and relaxed. So find that position. Relax your shoulders. Lift your chin a little bit and just feel centered and balanced so that you can relax without falling over. Right? We're going to let go of muscular tension, so you want to be balanced. Feet flat on the floor and connect to the earth. As you close your eyes now, Imagine how it would feel to be a tree, or a bush, or a flower, or blade of grass, to be rooted into the earth. Feel that feeling. And the feeling you're pretending or just making it up, of course, that's exactly the right feeling. How would it feel to be rooted like a big tree, so safely and securely into the ground? Like a lightning rod drawing off energy, static energy, into the earth, feeling grounded, connected, plugged in, as if this is where I grow, this is my spot, I belong here. And at the top of your head, feel a connection. At the very top of your head, the crown chakra, imagine an openness, a receptivity to a downward precipitation of energy, a life force, like the force in Star Wars, the force, Luke, the force, it's everywhere. Stand open and receptive to that undifferentiated consciousness, that unified field of energy that gently precipitates down into your body, illumining and animating the life force that vivifies you, that recharges and restores and renews. And feel a kind of a warm glow radiating out from the heart center, filling your rib cage, radiating into all the spaces that sometimes feel empty, in the center of your body, down into your core, behind the navel, spreading into your shoulders and down your arms to the tips of your fingers and thumbs, radiating like you're a battery being recharged, restored, renewed, down into your legs, past your knees, your calves, into your feet, to the tips of your toes. And then scan your body with your awareness from head to toe, releasing, relaxing, letting go of the last of any physical tension. Imagine your muscles going limp. Imagine arteries and veins and tiny little capillaries dilating as the muscles through which they course relax. So the blood moves with less resistance, and vital energies flow along your nervous system with less resistance, bringing an ease, a grace, an elegance to the very fact that your body is being breathed for you. But let's exert our will for a moment over that breathing and take 3 or 4 nice, slow, deep breaths. As you inhale, ideally through the nose, pull in strength and power. Hold for a moment as you peak. And as you exhale just as slowly through the nose or the mouth, feel a letting go feeling. as if a sigh of relief is a sigh of release. And then do that a second and a third time. Pulling in strength as you inhale, and as you exhale, letting go of tension as if you're breathing out black, oily smoke. In comes the good air, fresh and clean and pure, full of oxygen. Out goes the bad air, the carbon dioxide, the waste products of oxidation. One more time. Big breaths and the letting go as you exhale. Soften your body. Breathe normally, as if your body is being breathed for you. Again, scan your body slowly from head to toe, softening like butter on a warm day, and internally reminding yourself that you are safe. This is a safe place for you and a safe time for you to feel a deep letting go feeling. Brain waves lower, the whole physiology of your body is changing now. As you come to a place between asleep and awake, and you just sort of float there. Bring your awareness to the bottom of your nose. Find your spot, perhaps the tip of the nose, a place on the septum between the nostrils, or inside and slightly above the rim of the nostrils. Find your spot. And I'm going to ask you just for 3 minutes to watch your breath and identify not as the breather, for your body is being breathed for you. Identify as the one who watches. And when distracted, which is inevitable, you find yourself thinking of anything else but your breathing, smile, say to yourself, of course, this is what the brain does. It thinks. I'm training it to feel safe and relaxed. And from a place of non-attachment, observe the body breathing itself all by itself. Until you hear my voice again in just a few minutes. Continue for a moment to watch your body breathing itself. And remind yourself silently, internally, that it is not necessary to manage your thinking, to control your thoughts and feelings, much less to eliminate thinking in order to meditate, but just the opposite. We learn to meditate because we find our thoughts slowing down, the gaps between them opening. Our feelings become more calm. And our awareness, our insight and understanding begins to expand all by itself. And we learn, in addition to logic and analysis and reasoning, we can develop our intuition. We can listen for that still small voice that is often unheard given the noise and the frenzy and the chaos of routine thinking with our eyes open and the brain and body overstimulated. For there is truly nothing natural about the way we live, especially in cities, driving on freeways, scheduling hours and even parts of an hour, as if we're in a grand race to get somewhere, to accomplish something, to finish the to-do list, even if only for a moment or two. As if at the end of that, we'll find some peace. And in that peace, happiness. Among the many benefits and advantages of developing a meditation practice is the recognition that peace and happiness is always with you, underneath, behind, hidden inside the frenzy, the hurry-upness of the world. We go searching for that which already exists. The peace and the happiness, and for that matter, the contentment and the love we seek is always with us. It could not be otherwise. Ours is not to seek and find this peace, happiness, this love, but to let go of everything that is not peace and happiness and love. And voila, there it is, radiating out gently from the core of your being, It was there all along, just buried by the way in which the physical material world distracts us, pulls us out of ourselves, and projects us into this world of consensus and form. Be clear about this. The love you're looking for, the satisfaction, the contentment, the peace of mind is not something you attain. It is not a destination. You will not be introduced to it in the world. You'll not find it from another. You can't purchase it or buy it. It is not in the world. It is not even something you possess or have or do. It's foolish to wish for or aspire to, but to acknowledge that you already have it. Indeed, it's what you are. You not only have the love you're looking for, you are the love you're looking for, the peace, the happiness, the abundance, the simple joy that you long for is underneath everything else. Just let go. Now, because letting go and discovering deep inner peace is new for most of us, it's unknown. And ironically, there's a bit of stress that comes from de-stressing, from unwinding, from letting go. We're familiar with our stress and our anxiety. We're very familiar with the holding on feeling, holding on for dear life, our attachments. It's so familiar. It's not comfortable, but it's familiar. So allowing yourself to feel safe and relaxed may seem like a bit of a risk. Like, uh-oh, I don't know about this letting go stuff. Feels like I ought to be holding on. It's a practice. Take baby steps. Let go a little bit more each time. It's how we deal with fear and anxiety and stress in a clinical sense. Systematic desensitization, the psychologist calls it. It just means if you're afraid of something, you take it a little bit at a time. Like a fear of heights, you stand on a box 6 inches above the ground until you get used to it, and then maybe you go to the first floor of a tall building and look out a window and think about how it feels to be 10 feet off the ground. And little by little, bit by bit, you climb the building the next day, a couple of days later, a few days after that, higher and higher, and acclimate, adjust. And your fear of heights, born of our unfamiliarity, goes away. So too with any fear. The anxiety, the stress, dare I say, the fear of letting go of muscular tension in the same way as a practice. Performance anxiety, public speaking, singing or dancing before a crowd. Little by little, just do it. What was that book? Feel the fear and do it anyway. Do it in little bite-sized pieces. And as we discuss meditation and relaxation, meditation is a practice of relaxation. Allow yourself those same baby steps, little by little. Let it be a practice. If you have time to breathe, you have time to meditate. Recommit to a meditation practice. 12 to 15 minutes once a day. If you miss a day or two each week, that's okay. Don't admonish yourself. Practice. Practice bringing your life into balance for the benefits to carry over as you open your eyes and move out into the world in a few weeks will amaze you. It's stunning. And in a few months, it's transformational. And in a year or two, you'll wonder why you didn't do it sooner, what you were waiting for, all that holding on. And life becomes joyous. And you become smarter and more available to other people. Life becomes rich. And you access wisdom. And you find meaning and purpose in your life. Beyond earning and spending and producing and consuming, real meaning and purpose from letting go. Form the intention to return to the waking state. Remember the room in which you sit, the class that you're attending. Feel a rising up as you awaken in the morning, for example, moving toward that wide awake state, and then open your eyes now, wide awake and alert back in the room, feeling fine, feeling better than before, bringing with you a sense of peace, relaxation, and a little bit of joy, a little bit of happiness. Take a nice big breath to finish it off with a big breath, letting go, and maybe a stretch, like when you wake up. And welcome back. Wide awake, better than before. I wonder how many of you have heard of or are familiar with John Lilly. Does that name ring a bell for you, John Lilly? He passed away probably 10 or 12 years ago. He was a dolphin researcher, among other things, and was fascinated by the fact that dolphins are one of only a handful of animals that we know of that are self-aware. In other words, they can reflect on their thinking, think about their thinking, turn their attention to their feelings. Yes, animals do have emotions. And The ultimate test that science has settled on for self awareness is recognizing your image in a mirror, knowing that it's you. I saw a video not long ago of some scientists that were doing this test in the wilderness, and they set up this big mirror. And the piece of the video that they had released was this big black bear coming around the corner, not recognizing that it's a mirror from the back, and coming around the side of the mirror and seeing its reflection out of the corner of its eye, right? Its peripheral vision. And then it turns its head and sees itself in the mirror and almost jumps out of its skin. I mean, literally. I never saw a bear jump before. It literally jumped a foot off the ground and then charged at the mirror. The bear clearly did not recognize itself in the mirror. It saw something in the mirror. It saw another bear. Your dogs and cats may look at a mirror. They may watch TV. I know mine do. Especially if they're interested. If my cats see birds on TV or other cats, especially other cats, they'll watch it. But we also have a full-length mirror they sit in front of and they look at it, but they don't really know that that's their reflection. They can't comprehend that. There's only a half a dozen, well, I think we're up to 10 actually, and some of them you might expect. Killer whale, the orca, apparently not gray whales or blue whales or humpbacks, but the orcas recognize their reflection in a mirror. Dolphins, gorillas, bonobos, a kind of a chimpanzee, elephants. Yeah, elephants are really smart. And then the ones that are most unexpected, I think, include ants. That's surprising to me anyway, because their brains are so small. An elephant, you might say, well, or a whale, well, they have big brains, of course, and they're millions of years old. They're much older than human beings. So, but an ant is self-aware. An ant recognizes its its image in a mirror. Yeah, and a magpie, well, crow. They're incredibly smart, and when they look in a mirror, they recognize themselves. That's self-awareness. That's the current scientific definition of self-awareness. And most human babies are not able to do that until about 18 months old. So a baby younger than 18 months, put them in front of a mirror, for the first few months, the baby can't even focus. It just sees shadows and vague shapes. And then the eye muscles begin to strengthen and they learn to focus, but still are not self-aware enough. The brain's still developing. Human brain develops until you're about 19 or 20 years old. That's why teenagers do so many stupid things and are so unconscious. We're just still becoming self-aware. So what does it mean to be self-aware beyond recognizing your image in a mirror? It means to begin to not only think but to observe your thoughts, to be aware that you have choices, that you can consider that there are thoughts you haven't thought, that there are options, alternatives, answers that maybe are not apparent to you, that you could reflect upon. Hear that word? Reflect upon and consider. You could anticipate the consequences of your behavior as you become more self-aware, something we often do not do. We just say something before we realize the impact that it has. Or we do something rash without considering the consequences. So we're more or less self aware. It also includes understanding your emotions from a non thinking place. Most of us think about our emotions, but don't get very far. Have you ever noticed that thinking about how you feel doesn't really yield much in the way of understanding? So, what else do you do? Well, you feel the feeling and sit there quietly and let your intuition speak to you, that still small voice. And maybe you suddenly find yourself remembering another time that you felt like this. And then maybe a third time or a fourth time. And then you begin to recognize a pattern in these feelings, what they're associated with, what they symbolize or represent. But thinking about it, that's not really the process. You see, it's thinking is deductive. It's a rational, analytical thought process is general to specific. That's what we mean by deductive thought. You know, Sherlock Holmes. Well, it's not this, and it couldn't be that, and this is not a possibility because of this, and you break it down general to specific. Well, that's fine if you start with what you know, but what if you have a bunch of specific details and you want to induce an overarching concept, a connection? What I see the pearls, but I don't see the necklace. Where is the string that unifies all these separate things? What do they have in common? Nobody ever taught you to do that. It's not in school. Inductive, they might call it creative thought, but inductive logic is usually limited to if-then statements, and we get very confused. Last year we talked about inductive and deductive logic and the difference between uh, every crow I've ever seen is black, therefore all crows must be black, but that does not mean all black birds are crows. So we get easily confused around logic and analysis. But that's all we got. And when it comes to understanding your feelings, there, there is enormous benefit in using meditation, deep relaxation, to develop your self-awareness in this way. See, this is my argument. The primary benefit of meditation, of deep relaxation, profound relaxation, the profundity in it, is that it expands self-awareness. The reason I mentioned John Lilly and the dolphin research is it led him in time to study sensory deprivation. Now, I'm sure many of you know about these samadhi tanks or flotation tanks, sensory deprivation tanks. And when scientists first began to study 30 years ago, 40 years ago, what happens when people are deprived of sensory input, they anticipated that people would fall asleep. In fact, people did not fall asleep when they were deprived of sensory input. Their awareness expanded. They began to dream, to get visual imagery that initially was called hallucination, except the imagery was so valuable, so full of information, insight, understanding, these epiphanies and revelations, lid lifting. Oh my God, you know what I realized? Sitting in that sensory or floating in that sensory deprivation tank. So they started with like these soundproof closets and eye masks, and they developed into the flotation tank, where this like large coffin shaped tank would be filled with water that was saturated with salt to the point that it just could not hold any more salt. That made the water buoyant, so you floated high in the water and with a little bit of relaxation, just the slightest relaxation, found yourself able to float easily. But it's also dark in there. And somewhere between 60 and 80% of what's going on in the brain is visual. So you just close your eyes, or more to the point, get in this deep, deep, dark, completely devoid of light flotation tank, which is also soundproof and blocked off from any fragrance, or there's nothing to taste. And the water is heated to body temperature, so not only are you supported by the water, floating high in the water, but pretty soon, within minutes, you don't even feel the water. You can't feel where your body ends and the water begins, because the water is heated up to body temperature. Do you see? All of your senses and sensations are receiving virtually no stimulus at all, and awareness explodes. It's like off the chart smart. It's a little rhyme, doo-dah, doo-dah. I never heard myself say that. Off the chart smart. And these are still around. I know for those of you in Southern California, there's a big center in Pasadena. There used to be some in the west side of town, but I haven't lived in Los Angeles in quite a while. So you might have to look around, or whatever city you're listening to me in, you may want to check and see if there are samadhi tanks, sensory deprivation tanks, flotation tanks, uh, or you can rent an hour. I think it's probably $40 to $60 an hour, something like that. But it's life changing. And you may say, well, I don't swim in community pools. I don't, I don't want to get into a tank of water that somebody else has been in. But all of these places are set up with showers. You're required to shower and soap down before you get into the tank. And this is not you don't need to strip down. You can wear a bathing suit, but you're alone in there. There's an attendant if you need one up front, but usually you're alone. You go into this room, you shower, and you jump into the tank, and they change the water regularly. But you come out of there changed. And it's the same brainwave state that we seek with meditation. And we also did a class on this last year, the correlation of brainwaves to relaxation and deep relaxation. The basic four channels of brainwave frequencies are beta, which is like 14 cycles to 40 cycles. That's where we're wide awake, where we live our lives. Most of us in mid to high 30s. And the more stimulated you are, the more stressed you are, the higher the brainwave frequency. You can see it in people. They fidget. People fidget. They Again, their attention span is short. Attention span in American young people, I started to say a few minutes ago, it's now down to about 10 minutes. Kids have a hard time even watching a movie because their attention span, the wiring in the brain, as I say, is such that they just lack the ability. Uh, they have that attention deficit disorder. People don't seem to recognize, even the medical establishment, that while there may be such a thing as ADD or ADHD, this hyperactivity and attention deficit is quite often the result of nothing but stress and anxiety. And so if your brain thinks that it's always in danger, there's all this stimulus going on, and most of it unknown, what's going to happen next, you're in constant fight or flight. And again, my argument is not only does that weaken the immune system, illness is called dis-ease for a reason. Not only are you more likely to get sick and develop horrible illness and disease as a result of stress. I mean, even cancer, heart disease, diabetes, all kinds of horrible things, not to mention the common cold or the flu or just feeling tired or depressed. All of this is stress related. It's just, we're overstimulated, we're burning out. So Lily's research with dolphins and the self-awareness of just a handful of animals that I've mentioned here led to his research with this sensory deprivation and the expanded awareness that came out of that. It just duplicates meditation. So that when you close your eyes, it's not pitch black like it is in a sensory deprivation tank, but it's black enough, it's dark enough. You've reduced radically visual stimulus. And in the same way, as you sit quietly and don't move and then put your attention on deep relaxation, I'm not sure how many of you have noticed, but I always, as part of the induction at the beginning of any meditation, go through this whole physical relaxation thing. A lot of meditation teachers don't do that. They just have you close your eyes and begin to meditate. Well, the relaxation will accrue, but I think it's important to be aware of, deliberately, purposefully, create a letting go feeling in your body and sense that letting go feeling in your body, muscles softening, relaxing, blood veins dilating. You know the drill. We've gone through it enough here. And then the amygdala lets go. The fight or flight center in the brain goes, oh, we're safe. Eyes are closed. Couldn't be that much danger. Slow, deep breathing. Well, that doesn't look like danger. A letting go of muscular tension. My God, this self of mine must be safe enough that we can relax and turn down the adrenaline. We don't need all this adrenaline, and we don't need all this cortisol, and things normalize and the healing commences. But moreover, awareness expands. Are you hearing me clearly? Awareness of your thoughts. You're not just the thinker, you're the awareness of your ability to think. And you're not just emotionally driven or a victim of emotions that other people caused you to feel. You become aware of being aware. And your behavior, your speech, and your actions are less likely to be reflexive and more likely to be well considered and then deliberately initiated, such that we're less likely to say regrettable things or suffer the resentment of speaking too quickly and then realizing we've made a fool of ourselves, or we hurt someone's feelings, or we hadn't really considered the impact on other people. Oops. Right. In Buddhist philosophy, there are 5 aggregates. And the 5 aggregates are basically, if you study Buddhism, it's said differently than I'm going to say it, but I'm going to say it in a very simple, direct way that carries essentially the same meaning. The five aggregates are awareness of your thinking, not just the ability to think, but to be aware of it. Awareness of your emotions, same thing, not just to feel the emotion, but to be non attached, to take one step back or slightly rise above and say, Michael's feeling funky today. He's sort of sad. He's sort of depressed. Or, boy, this conversation I'm having is starting to really upset me. I can feel anger coming on. I'm not angry yet. I'm not acting angry, but I can feel it coming on. That's much more aware than suddenly finding yourself yelling and throwing stuff and threatening people, right? Thirdly, awareness of your speech and your physical actions and your body's health, the physical. So, mental, emotional, physical awareness in each of those three. The fourth aggregate is the world around you, your relationships, your perception of figure and form in the world, circumstance and situation. Being increasingly aware of your relationship with the world around you. And the fifth aggregate is to be aware of awareness itself. This I love the idea that not only am I increasingly self aware as a result of practicing meditation, increasingly intelligent, self aware, even approaching wisdom, which is an understanding of what you do not know. Wisdom is not all this knowledge and understanding. It's all this knowledge and understanding leading you to an awareness of what you do not know. That's wisdom, at least in the Socratic sense. But to be aware of being aware. And another way to say this, which I'd like you to make a mental note of, this is worthy of remembering, is to notice what I notice. Wouldn't it be nice to remind yourself throughout the day to take a breath, to relax, and even if you don't have 10 or 15 minutes to meditate, just take 30 seconds to detach, to let go of your busy, 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 and notice what you're noticing. And notice that you are the one who notices, which is very different from just doing and doing and doing. To notice what we notice is to be aware of being aware. And that's a step toward enlightenment. The next step is to be the awareness itself. So we go from the thinker who has feelings and speaks and behaves reflexively to noticing what we notice, to being aware of being aware. Be aware of your thoughts, your feelings, your speech and behavior, the world around you, and aware of awareness itself. And these are not really five separate things, they're five aspects of one thing, capital A, awareness, which is your identity. That's the truth of who you are. It's consciousness. It's the one thing that's missing from organized religion. Religion busies itself with belief systems and, to a large extent, morality and redeeming sin and temptation. And Christ died and washed away all the sins if you would accept him, and every religion has its own take. When have you ever heard a religious person talking about consciousness? Except perhaps in Eastern philosophies. But they are philosophies. And they're not even one religion, even Christianity. I Googled it once. How many domination, not domination, what's the word I want? Non-denominational, denominational. How many of them are there? How many types of Christianity are there? Google told me 43,000. Take your pick. Presbyterian, Pentecostal, Lutheran, Methodist, all the Protestants, the Protestants, the Protestants, the Catholics, and then the non-denominational churches and the Church of the Holy this and the Church of the a different take, a different angle on what's supposed to be the teachings of Christ. Is awareness discussed in organized religion? Is consciousness part of organized religion? What is Christ consciousness? Maybe you found a church that talks about Christ consciousness. Maybe you found a temple that talks about the consciousness of Moses. Maybe you found, you know, a Muslim mosque. That's the word I was looking for, where they talk about the consciousness of Muhammad. Buddhism is really not a religion, though some people practice it as if it were. But you'll hear a lot about consciousness in Buddhism, and to a large extent, many forms of Hinduism, which again is thousands and thousands of variations on Brahmanism. And then we have the Taoism of the Chinese, and Sikhism, and Jainism, and breaking it down, many different flavors and forms and variations. But you have to be conscious or aware of the nature of consciousness or awareness. It's 5 minutes after 12. I want
Yeah.
you, I want you to think about commenting, if not questioning. I love questions. I very much am interested in your comments either way. If you just put a little concise reference to your comment or your question in the chat and direct it to Hannah today, and she'll call on you, and I'll either respond or we'll bring you on to expand a little bit. Hannah?
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say pretty much the same thing as you, but like also, questions or comments, but also something you might want to hear more about, or the part of the meditation that you enjoyed the most, or something like that, just to generate thoughts and ideas.
Yeah, so while people are doing that, unless you have one, why don't you give me a little of what you heard or what you found interesting in that, Hannah?
Sure. Well, when you were talking about kids and their attention spans, I'm an educator, and there is sort of this strange thing going on where children seem to expect themselves to already know how to do something when they're at the beginning of learning it. But I just want to say, ADD, attention deficit disorder, is not the inability to pay attention. It's paying attention to everything. So a door opens, they notice it. Somebody drops a pencil, they notice it. And so what I find is the lack of an ability to concentrate for an extended period of time. And a lot of times I think that comes from, I'm a Montessori educator, and one of the things we talk about is that until our basic needs are met, we're not going to be able to concentrate. So to go from the home to the school is a huge transition and change of environment. And if you haven't had breakfast, or your house burnt down last week, whatever situations have occurred, until you're settled, you're not going to be ready to learn anything or concentrate on anything. So yeah. And then somebody did put something in the chat box, but if you wanted to comment on what I just said first.
No, I don't disagree with that. My basic rap is about, you know, my book is Fearless Intelligence. It's all about fear and fearlessness. And it's another word for anxiety. Anxiety is often used in teaching in situations like this because fear is such a frightening word. Anxiety is not quite as frightening as the word fear, but they're synonyms. And again, whether it's a little or a lot, whether it's panic or a phobia or simply mild apprehension, a little or a lot, it's all the same thing. And it's not about danger. It's about things that are unknown, new, confusing, or that which we're unaware of, whether dangerous or not. And we don't know that yet. If you, I've looked in every dictionary I've ever looked at, the word fear is described in terms of a potential danger, or whether it's real or imagined, some sort of hazard, threat, or danger. That's not what fear is. The reason we have fire drills and we learn about earthquakes in California is to be prepared. And so the more we know, the less frightened we are, even though the danger remains constant. Arguably, the preparation could make the situation a little less dangerous, but really what you're modifying is not the danger, but your knowledge and your understanding of the danger. That's what fear and ignorance is really all about. So these kids are anxious. The reason they a quick story. I of all the hundreds of clients I had, this one uh, I often think of. I asked her to meditate. We were walking through a meditation exercise, and we're about 60 seconds, maybe 90 seconds into the meditation, and I'm doing this narrative as I often do. And suddenly she opens her eyes, pops her eyes open and said, "You don't expect me to meditate with that clock, do you?" And I had an electric clock on the wall, battery operated clock hanging on the wall. And I said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "You can't hear that clock?" And I'd had that clock for years, and I'd never once heard it. And I listened very carefully, and sure enough, it made a little sound, a little click, click, click. But I mean, barely audible. And yet, in her mind, once she heard that, she fixated on it, and it rushed to the forefront of her awareness, and that's all she could hear, because to the brain, it was some sort of threat. It was a distraction. It was no different than if a siren had gone by or a dog was barking in the next room, even though it was as faint. So it's not about objective reality, these distractions. It's about what our mind makes of them. And there are techniques for dealing with distraction. I don't want to go too far afield here, but that's what attention deficit, that's my understanding, Hannah. I don't disagree with your definition. I always, what comes to my mind is there's something scary in, oh, the door opened, everybody's head in the room turns. Who's coming into the room? What, was it my father coming to beat me up? Is it my mother coming to yell at me because I did something wrong? And
There's definitely some hypervigilance out there, that's for
yeah,
sure.
that's a good way to say it. Yeah.
There is a thank you and there's a question, but I have to say, I saw this meme because you were talking about that you had never noticed the sound of the clock. And I saw this meme the other day that said, if you think you're too small to make a difference, try being a mosquito in the middle of the night.
That's right. Sounds like a B-52. I can't sleep with that mosquito buzzing. Right, right.
So there's one thing, well, now there's two questions. So Ignacio says, thank you very much for the profundity of your knowledge. It's a joy in the soul. Thank you, thank you. And I assume that even though that came to my chat, that is for you. Hanif says he has a question on meditation, which is the best for beginners. And do you want me to say the other one now or give you a moment with that one?
No, are both from Hanif?
No, there's another one from Jack.
Let me respond to Hanif and then we'll go to Jack. Um, Hanif, you can open your mic if you'd like, unmute. I guess I need which meditation is best for beginners. A lot of it depends on the reason why somebody is meditating, but I'm hearing you say beginner. Shoo. Because I think I'm sort of torn because I think visualization is so important when it comes to finding practical application for meditation. Problem solving requires visualization, goal setting, decision making, healing, so many practical applications of deep relaxation require visualization that I think that's exceedingly important to learn early on. But at the same time, I don't think there's any meditation more fundamental than Vipassana, sometimes called insight meditation, which is the breath watching to create a sense of non-attachment. Remember, Vipassana breath watching is not to develop concentration, but by non-attachment to improve upon your ability to catch yourself being distracted sooner and sooner and sooner and sooner. So when I begin to watch my breath, I find myself thinking about a shopping list and I have groceries to buy, or, uh, gee, I'm 2 months overdue in getting the oil changed on my car. Oh, wait a minute, I'm supposed to be meditating. Why am I thinking about these things? And then we get frustrated or we admonish ourselves. And it's important not to do that. You're not developing concentration, but simply awareness. So congratulate yourself, reward yourself for recognizing sooner and sooner that your mind has been distracted. Let it go. Bring your attention back to the breathing. So I'm a little torn because I think both of those are a place to begin. It certainly reflects my experience with it. I don't know. Do you want to expand on that, Hanif?
Well, first of all, Michael, thank you for what you do and thank you for taking my question. I think, when you mentioned visualization, I started kind of followed a gentleman by the name of Lou Tice back in the 80s, early 90s, I forget when. And he talked a lot about visualization. But when you talk about visualization and concentrating on your breath, I think the combination of two for me would probably be the ideal thing to kind of work more on, because the guided meditation kind of gets me quite distracted, and I kind of, my mind kind of goes into a different direction and kind of come back, hey, what happened there? But I do appreciate the answer, and I'll kind of work on that and kind of get back to you at some point on and see how that's going. Thanks again, Michael.
Well, wait a sec. What I'm hearing you say then is that in your own practice, you put those two together. You use guided imagery with your breath watching meditation.
That's what I try. Yes.
And you're saying you prefer to do that in silence on your own rather than listen to a narrator.
That is true.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. Let me ask you how long you've been meditating.
On and off, probably 30 some years.
Oh, okay.
But I still consider myself a beginner because I do get distracted, Michael.
Well, that's wise.
I hear a car, I hear a creak in the wall, or
Of course.
It's a journey.
There's wisdom in always being a beginner. There's a story I think I may have mentioned a few months ago. that in the ancient wisdom schools of Alexandria, if you were a worthy student, if you merited inclusion in the mystery school, you would enter as a hierophant, as a very wise person who managed to gain admission. And after many years of study in the mystery school, you would graduate as a neophyte, as a beginner, because the nature of wisdom is to focus on what is yet to be known and learning primarily for the purpose of asking better and better questions, but always being humble and open to the enormity of what there is to comprehend, and the majesty and the mystery. They're called mystery schools, and mysticism, and the individual is referred to as a mystic. It's all about what's unknown, what's not known. So that keeps us humble. I'm happy to hear you say that. We're all beginners. Yeah.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. And Hama, you said Jack had a question?
Oh, yeah, the chat box is kind of jumping, and there's a couple things I want to say. First of all, though, I want to share what you shared with me a couple weeks ago. I asked you what your meditation practice is, and you mentioned the Insight Timer app to me, and I've just fallen absolutely in love with it ever since. So I just wanted to say that. Then somebody put in the chat box, Jean posted that the place in Pasadena is called justfloat.com. So I'm putting that for everybody to see. And then somebody mentioned that both chat options, being Michael and me, is a little unclear who to send questions to. Just send them to me, because Michael doesn't check the chat box. And so either me or Melinda are the ones that are checking the chat box. And then back to John, he said, what I discovered about emotional discovery in the 60s. So I don't know if you wanted to share about that, Jack, or if that was a question.
Yeah.
Hello, Michael.
Hello, Jack.
What you said about bringing awareness to the emotions reminded me of, I can't remember what these meetings were called. This is like actually the late 60s, early 70s. I think it was part of the human potential movement. But what I remember was going to these kind of public meetings. They're small, usually in somebody's living room. And the person directing it would invite people with problems that wanted to discuss their problems. And what they would do is just have the person go into how they initially felt about the problem, and just direct them deeper and deeper and deeper into their emotions. And inevitably, they would get to a place in their emotions where their emotions would solve the problem. You know, the actual resolution of the problem was kind of, if you went deep enough, was there. And I saw this happening over and over again. And I was completely amazed, because I never thought that your emotions were actually that wise. I often was aware of them when they felt problematic, and wouldn't think that the solutions were also there. But I can't remember what they were called. They were very popular at the time. But I do really remember that one bit of wisdom coming out of it, that there's intelligence in your emotions.
It was not until 1995 when a New York Times reporter and a member of the Harvard faculty named Daniel Goleman released the book Emotional Intelligence that I ever heard that term. And I jumped for joy. I thought, oh my Lord, somebody's written a book on this. And they gave us the handle we've been looking for, emotional intelligence. And he broke it down into 4 parts. The first 2 intrapersonal, and the second 2 of the 4 pillars interpersonal. The intrapersonal are self-awareness and emotional management. The third and fourth pillars of emotional intelligence are interpersonal, and that's empathy and social awareness or leadership. Self-awareness, emotional management, empathy, and leadership or social awareness. And I've used Goleman's work ever since. I just think he's written several books since and inspired many, many people. And I think along with the work of John Kabat-Zinn in the University of Massachusetts, I think it is, these guys have really pioneered this whole field to be mindfully aware of your emotions and allow the emotion to speak to you. In my private work, the really the core of the work I do with individuals privately is emotional dialogue, where I put people in a meditative state, I guide them into a deeply relaxed state, introduce them to their emotion by finding it in the body. Where is it in the body? Sometimes it's multiple places, but primarily where in your body do you feel it? If that emotion had a color, what color would it be? Without physically moving, if you could just imagine reaching out to touch that colorful emotion for temperature or texture, how does it feel? And little by little, we move them more intimately to being in touch with the emotion or set of emotions until they begin to dialogue with it. They ask questions and the emotions answer, provided the person is willing to trust their intuition, their first impression, not to think about it, because when it comes up, the more you think about it, the more removed you become from that core intelligence. So it's got to be deep relaxation, in touch intimately with the feeling or set of feelings, and then trusting your first impression. And what comes is the answers that you've just referred to, often in quite profound, mind-blowing, expansive, lid lifting, oh my God. It's like all the pieces suddenly fall together. And so, yeah, in psychology, there's three basic entry points. There's the cognitive, uh, there's the emotional, and there's movement awareness or the behavioral approach. And sometimes therapists will talk about CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. Well, that's two of the three, but they're missing the emotion, except they would say, well, that's included in the cognitive. So it's really cognitive, emotional, behavioral therapy. Well, that's all three: mental, emotional, and physical, right? And then there is transpersonal psychology, which would be the spiritual approach. So they're all different doorways, but they lead to the same thing. And the heart is the emotion. I mean, what's between the physical or the mental and the physical, or the physical and the mental? What's in the middle? The emotional, the heart, where the center of things. So the emotional nature has an intimate relationship with our thinking. They trigger each other, but the emotion is felt in the body. So it's both. The great thing about emotions is they're stand a leg in both worlds. They're partly mental and partly physical. They have an intimate relationship with your thoughts, but are felt in the body. That's the center. So maybe we shouldn't be surprised that that's where the answers to our problems are, not in thinking. Maybe the answers to the problems of the world are in thinking, But the answer to our personal problems, our sadness, our heartache, our alienation, our fears of inadequacy and such are in the heart. Yeah. Thanks,
Yeah.
Jack. Yeah.
Thanks.
Anything else, Hannah? Oh, I think Hannah.
Nothing in the chat box, but Gene had his hand up for a while. Actually, Gene did put something in the oh yeah. Oh, I see what the person's saying. Both of us are named as Michael, so you can't tell who to send it to. I apologize. That's my bad. I should have changed mine because I log in on Michael's account. Okay, now I'll be careful of that next time. Thank you. So Gene said, you are also, okay. So he's just explaining it to me. I am forced to get, okay. Okay, sorry about that. And then Gene, you had your hand up for a while. Did you want to say something? And I'm going to sign off after this.
Yeah, I know you got to go. Thank you, Hannah.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment about the visualizing parking concept that I found very fascinating. And I kind of had a question for Michael because I tried it last week. I joined a massage studio on Ventura Boulevard. If you're familiar with Ventura Boulevard, it can be pretty tricky
Sure.
to park there. And so all day before my session, I visualized getting a parking spot right on the boulevard, right in front of the entrance. And sure enough, there was one waiting for me right in front, a perfect metered spot that was open. But my scientific side of myself is like, well, how do I know that wasn't just a coincidence? Was it the time of day? Like, how many times does that need to happen where you can feel confident that you actually manifested that versus just being there, whether you would have done it or not?
Yeah, those are the head trips you go through when you start watching this work. I would say continue to reflect on that. Think about it, figure it out. Ask yourself those difficult and even impossible to answer questions. There's no reason that I would suggest stop doing that. Have more faith. Believe in yourself. You could do that too, but it's up to you. I think cast about, be confused, enjoy the wondering process, and repeat. I mean, obviously, if you continue to do it, there will come a time when it doesn't work, and then your conundrum is confounded. Oh my God, now it didn't work, and am I interfering with other people? Maybe somebody else needed that spot, and there's all kinds of questions that begin to. I think at the end of the day, what'll happen is you'll just do it, and if it works, you'll enjoy it and giggle to yourself, and if it doesn't work, say la vie. It didn't, and now I'm just like everybody else for the day, and just figure it out yourself. Deal with it. Make of it what you will, but it without doubt, it's going to put you on a track of considering to what extent is my life a reflection of my thoughts, my feelings, my attitudes, and my beliefs. To what extent am I experiencing in my life a reflection of my projection? A reflection, when you look out into the world, is it being done to me? Or is it a reflection of my projection? And to the extent that you consider maybe it is, then you're going to get better and better at living an absolutely magical life. And synchronicity. So you're familiar, I'm sure, with the Jungian concept of synchronicity, right, Gene?
Yes, yes.
Well, the same thing. Is it a coincidence that I was thinking of this song and suddenly it came on the radio? People saying, "What's a radio?" Or I'm thinking about something and then I just drove by a billboard that made a reference to that very thing. Or someone comes to mind you haven't thought of in a long time, and the phone rings 10 minutes later and it's them. The meaningful coincidence, when a coincidence happens and it feels meaningful, am I to reject that as just silly and I'm projecting and suffering from what a psychologist would call magical thinking? Or is there something real going on here? Brother, that is your struggle. Have at it. Enjoy it. Play with it. And how magical can you be? You know, it's just, I'm going to resist the temptation to tell you what, you know, how it is or what you have to do with it, and just be playful. And then you come back and you tell me what you've decided. Okay.
Right on.
Okay.
Thank
Good.
you.
Yeah. And congratulations on programming that parking spot. If you consider it is a coincidence, you might want to ponder the odds. You know, what are the chances? And don't just run off to Vegas and start throwing dice at the craps table either. All right, folks, that's all we have time for today. Thanks for your questions and your comments. Thanks for your participation. And again, those of you who are listening to the audio podcast, or well, this is edited out of the audio podcast, but if you have a habit of listening to the podcast, maybe when you're not able to be with us live, a review or a rating is helpful. On YouTube, subscribe. That really helps. Like and comment. And send your friends to michaelbenner.com. They can sign up for the newsletter there and get the link, or directly to wisdomofthesoul.school. Sounds like an odd domain name, but there's no .com, no .org. Wisdomofthesoul.school. A little video there, a little bio, and a form to fill out for the newsletter. I hope you have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next week. I hope your favorite team wins the Super Bowl today, if you're into that. I'd like you to unmute and say your farewells and so longs, and to each of you, Namaste, Aloha, and Salam. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank you
everyone.
very
Thank
much.
you.
Have a
Bye.
great week.